This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. When you visit the doctor, you probably hand over your insurance, your ID, and contact details. It's just one of the many places that has your personal info. And if any of them accidentally expose it, you could be at risk for identity theft. LifeLock monitors millions of data points a second. If you become a victim, they'll fix it, guaranteed, or your money back. Save up to 40% your first year at lifelock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
Welcome to
Only Murders in the Building,
the official podcast.
Join me, Michael Cyril Creighton, as we go behind the scenes with some of the amazing actors, writers, and crew from season 5.
The audience should never stop suspecting anything.
How can you not be funny crawling around on a coffin?
No, that's true.
Catch Only Murders in the Building official podcast, now streaming wherever you get your podcasts. And watch Only Murders in the Building, streaming on Hulu and Hulu on Disney Plus for bundle subscribers. Terms apply.
I remember we were playing for the state championship in 2008 against De La Salle, and we took a safety. We'd already basically had enough 2 pumps already, and it was a situation we wanted to take a safety, we wanted to do with our quarterback, but we hadn't practiced that. So we took 2 timeouts to talk about that in a row.
This is the Coaching Coordinator Network National Coach of the Week, presented by Modern Football. This week, the honor goes to Matt Logan, head coach of Centennial High School in Corona, California. Coach Logan just led Centennial to one of the biggest upsets in recent high school football memory, a 43-36 victory over Mater Dei, the nation's #1 ranked team. With the win, the Huskies catapulted 11 spots in the national rankings, climbing to number 7. But this moment is just the latest in a remarkable career. In his 28 seasons at the helm, Coach Logan has built Centennial into a powerhouse, earning over 300 career victories, 10 CIF Southern Section titles, and a 2018 CIF State Championship. His consistency is unmatched. For 18 straight years, Centennial quarterbacks have gone on to play at the college level. The National Coach of the Week is brought to you by Modern Football Technology, the platform helping coaches cut through the noise and gain a real edge on Friday nights. From live scouting and real-time in-game analytics to practice tracking and post-game breakdowns, Modern Football gives staffs the clarity they need to make faster, smarter decisions. To learn how you can bring Modern Football to your program, visit modernfootball.com or click the link in the show notes.
Whoa! That was a bop! Ooh, let's keep the party going with a claptrap public domain serenade! Happy birthday to you! Let's all loot and shoot! Ba-ba-doo-doo! Borderlands 4! Well, that kind of fell apart toward the end. But you get the idea. Borderlands 4 is out now! Buy it! Buy it, buy it, buy it!
Rated M for mature.
Welcome back to our National Coach of the Week series on Coaching Coordinator Network. This show is presented by Modern Football Technology, and we're excited to be joined by our National Coach of the Week at Centennial High School in Corona, California, Matt Logan. Matt, congratulations to you and your program on a big win.
Thank you. Yeah, it was a great game and an incredible experience for our kids and our coaches and our administration.
Yeah, you guys play in a league that is very competitive, and so you're used to these kinds of games, but obviously it's always big when you can knock off the team that's ranked #1 in the nation, and I know this has propelled you guys up the ranks too, now to number 7 in the nation. So all those things are great to talk about, but certainly it's always going to come down to what do you continue to do from here? And, what an incredible effort though. And it's always a group effort. Want to give you the chance to just recognize your staff and your team and everybody else who's contributed to this big win.
Yeah, absolutely. Our coaching staff's been with me for quite a while. And Dan Harry is our defensive coordinator, does such a great job and is really underappreciated, I think, in our whole scheme of things. But yeah, a lot of coaches have been instrumental in this, and I appreciate their hard work and very excited. I get to go to work every day. It doesn't feel like we're fun to be around these guys and trying to improve our team.
In looking at some of the things that help you along the way, you mentioned to me before we got going, situational football being a big thing. And so we're going to dig into a little bit today and how you approach situational football, what that looks like for you. from the planning all the way to what you guys do in practice to the execution. So we'd love to dig into that, Coach. What are the things that are important to you in that regard in situational football?
I think it's super important to work 2-minute drill at least once a week because that comes up at the end of the game. It's either going to be a 2-minute drill or a 4-minute drill. And so I really think it's important that you work those. And that came up in our game, and the game gets Mater Dei came up at the end of the half in a 2-minute drill, and it came up at the end of the game with a 4-minute drill. So, it was nice that we've had practice that multiple times leading up to, a week 3 game. I think it really gave us an advantage. And we work multiple situations as well for different other things, whether it be, hunting up from your 1-yard line, taking a safety with your offense, taking a safety with your punt team, just anything you could think of, defending a Hail Mary. We kind of like to try to tie it in with anything that goes on that week in football. And the latest one I can remember would be like a last play of the game type situation when teams are flipping the ball across the field and, making something happen. Having to play on the offensive side for that and then also having to defend that. So those are things that we talk about and try to implement. We actually do it all through spring as well. But in the fall, it's critically important that 2-minute, 4-minute drill. I just really think because that's how you get in the game. Any game that's close, it's going to be one of those two.
Yeah, those are situations you definitely have to work each week. They're not always the easiest thing to work and decide when you're going to put those into practice. I know, for us and what we did at the high school level and carried on, we did it also the same way at the college levels. It was something on, our last really full go practice of the week. For the college level was on a Thursday. It was the last drill we did on that day. And I would say, it was at times very productive and at times very frustrating too. You don't always necessarily get what you want out of those drills. So how do you ensure that those will be productive?
You have to plan it. And I think one of the ones I always think of as soon as you said that was when you're trying to work it, recovering it onside. Well, you're still the same team. Your hamstring is out there, right? You're like, you don't want to recover, but you need to recover because you need to work this situation. So you just need to plan it how it's going to work. And, we might tell a guy, hey, let it ricochet off you so we can work the purpose of this drill, and it's just crazy. Like even how overtime works, and that probably varies from state to state. But, we played an overtime game this year and, we had an idea of what that looks like because we had practiced that in the spring. So it's hard to do it sometimes, but we always feel like we're kind of bringing everybody together, with the ones that are like that are kind of one-offs type things or a couple times a year. 2-minute, 4-minute drill, when we say that, they know what that means. They know what that looks like. We do reiterate that when we're in the huddle before we come out to the field. But all the other stuff, we'll sit around, we'll talk about that. Here's a situation we're down. We need to recover an onside kick. We need to get either a 2-minute or urgent drill in order to get the points back on the board and those things. And if we're not close enough, depending on how much time left, we'll kick a field goal and then try to onside again. Just kind of depends on the situation and down at distance at that time. Just to explain those situations. I think one thing that's different with kids these days, I don't think they watch like full games like we used to when we were younger. They just watch, red zone or something and they're worried about their fantasy guys. They're not so much into the game where they understand situations quite like I think that we used to. And they've got other distractions as well that we didn't have. We would watch the game and then go out and emulate that in the park or in the yard. I think that's kind of been lost a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that you just saying that brings back memories of some of those games. And I remember being, a little kid and grabbing my helmet and going outside and we'd all, whatever happened. And I mean, for us, we were a Cleveland Browns game, which back at that time wasn't bad. We've had some miserable seasons since, but, doing those things. And I mean, the other thing, Coach, is, there was no red zone. And if you wanted to change the channel, you had to go up and click the TV. We're dating ourselves here.
Exactly.
But I agree. You don't see kids as much watching the game in context. And so, that has been something I've talked to high school coaches, I've talked to college coaches about. Like, guys don't necessarily come to you with that situational awareness of what those things are. So you do have to really teach those kinds of things. And the 2-minute drill, I think, becomes some obvious. I do want to touch on that, though. Like, for you, what are the keys to creating a successful environment for that drill in practice so that it does feel real?
Yeah, something that other people might not have access to. It's just something that we've become recently accessible to us. Is having the time on the scoreboard and be able to control that from the little remote. And that's the last 2 years we had a new scoreboard. So that's been phenomenal. Instead of having me yelling out across the sideline and trying to coach at the same time, we got 1:21 left, the clock's running, and I think that what's critical in that too is how that is managed by, I don't want to say referee because you don't have that in practice, but how the referee part is managed by coaches, the spotting of the ball, getting it set, when the change starts, so all that kind of stuff that actually, so you got to have those pieces in place to make it as realistic as possible. And that's my thing on that. And then, when the ball goes out of bounds in a game and how we get that ball back in, because in games you have ball boys, in practice you might not have that. So we talk about those little things that make a big difference when you're trying to actually practice. You can't sit around for 5 minutes waiting for you to get another ball in there, or, a kid run across the other end of the field to get a ball. It takes away from what you're trying to get accomplished in that situation.
Yeah, you really want to create that same sense of urgency the best way you can. And I mean, the reality of it is you might not have all those kinds of things. You might not have access to the scoreboard. You do have to call those things out, but it's always good to be able to teach those kinds of things. And I would say, like, if you don't have that, a lot of times teams are, maybe if they have a practice field or, the day before the game, they might be able to get into the stadium. I think it's useful for just getting kids in that mindset of, if you did have to yell that out at practice, that they are looking at a scoreboard, that they can see what time is on the clock. And I think the other thing too, one of the biggest things is understanding what stops the clock in those situations.
Especially in high school, when they know the first down stops the clock, and that gives you an advantage to be able to get a play in. We're not stuck that, like the NFL is, with the way that it's set up that way. I think the NFL should adopt the high school rules. I think it'd be a little more exciting than those 2 minutes to drill.
Yeah, definitely. Let's take a quick break to hear about modern football technology from Sean Grady at Geneva High School. They added modern football technology in the playoffs last year, and it made a big difference to him. Here's what he had to say. What advice, or what would you say to a coach who's maybe on the fence right now on if in-game analytics is something they really want to get into and if it could help their program?
I think my biggest advice for anyone is just, even if you dip your toe in, start somewhere. Check a front, track a run concept, track a play, and see if you like it. You might think it's too much data, it's going to give you too much information, but at the end of the day, you're going to decide what works for you, and you're going to get the data out that you want to get from it. And modern football does a great job of allowing you to use this in-game analytics and allows you to pick and choose what you want to get. If you don't want all that information, that's totally fine. Okay, but there might be some piece of information that's going to allow you to get into a call late in a game, in an important game, that could be the difference between winning and losing. And you don't want to be thinking back and saying, hey, if we just had known we were always getting this, or we were always getting this front and this personnel earlier, maybe we would have won that game. And us as a coaching staff have felt that in the past where, hey, if we had known this earlier in the first quarter, I feel like we would have been able to make an adjustment. And now we're able to do that in game at a faster pace, as opposed to waiting until halftime or seeing it after the game, watching on film, being mad about it.
It's never too late to add analytics to your workflow. With modern football technology's easy-to-use interface on tablets on game day, plus their quick onboarding process, they can have you up and running by the end of the week. Be sure to book a demo with them to see how it works and get going. Do that at modernfootball.com or check the show notes for a link. So looking at the other side of the 4-minute side, sometimes that's not as easy to simulate that. So what are the keys to the teaching of that period? I think is the most important thing. Yeah, you want to work to execute that in practice so that they have a run at it, but what kinds of things are you emphasizing there?
Just taking our time. We're an up-tempo offense anyway, so that's really a far contrast to what we normally do. So we have to really work on that and concentrate it. We talk about, when we get tackled in a tempo, we're going to run the ball in 5 yards away and toss it to the umpire so he can spot it. Or this one, we might want to leave the ball on the ground or have a bad errant throw to the referee to take more time, things like that. Just the little things that add, linemen not having to sit in their stance for 30 seconds, understanding what the signal looks like from the back judge in terms of how he's going to run the last 10 seconds off or want to snap at around 5-3. So understanding the mechanics that the referee utilizes. And I always ask that before every game. We're pretty uniform here now. But I remember, years ago when it wasn't uniform and you're trying to figure that out and you're trying to tell a quarterback or a center to look for that, it becomes tougher, So we just try to emphasize that. Then you got to have somebody actually be in that position like it is in the game. Again, the management part of it is more the key, I think, to most of the stuff. Having the spotters, having, somebody working chains, like all that kind of stuff that we take for granted in a game, but you need people to do that. And it takes, whether it's an injured kid or even coaches, whatever, we just try to make all that stuff that's got to be in place for it to be successful.
Yeah, I think you bring up a really important point too, because a lot of teams have gone to that up-tempo mode of doing things, and more of them, as I talk to them, really drill their procedures exactly like you said, like run that ball into the official so he can spot it right away. That now you have to be really intentional about, hey, when we are in this situation, leave that ball right there. Take your time getting up off the ground. All the kinds of things that go against what you installed, you do have to go over and teach those. And I think the other thing too, like I think back to, this was probably 2000. 11 or 12. And this is when I was at BW. We were playing Audubon College and we're in a 4-minute situation. And the thing I couldn't stand, because we really trained into our guys, these up-tempo procedures, let's get up to the ball and line up, is I'm sitting there in a formation and I'm thinking, I don't like this. These guys are sitting out there. They're adjusting to our formation. They're seeing everything. And it prompted us, to put the huddle back into our offense to handle that. Now, what was funny with that is, you go from really a silent way of communicating. And the first time I got these guys in a huddle, it was really strange. Like our quarterback's saying the play to him and they're all looking at him like, what did he just say? Like, I'm like, guys, just get the call. And they had wristbands. I'm like, just get the call from the sidelines like he is. And then you guys can chill in the huddle for a little bit and he'll say ready break and then go out and do your thing. So it's funny though, because, procedures become a big part of what we do. And so when you have these situations, you either have to come up with some different answers, some different ways you want to handle it, or start training exactly what those are, because they are not the norm.
Yeah, right. And anything that I think that takes kids out of the routine just totally jacks them up. I mean, it's even like, our first away game was, it was like a nightmare. And it's like, oh my gosh, they're so not used to this, and as high school is, rosters change on a yearly basis. So we, like us on offense, for example, we have one kid that comes back with a lot of experience on offense, one player out of 11. So everything's new to our offense. And so, just when you look at it from that perspective, it's just traveling and how to do that and packing the night before and being on a different campus. Or like for us, we like to try to go early and eat at a park and do a walk through a park and then get up to the stadium, just because of SoCal traffic is so unpredictable. At least we'll have, if we need time, we haven't. But it's just all that stuff. Any change in routine for kids are tough to deal with. So we try to incorporate as much stuff as we can to try to make them be aware of what's going to happen.
In looking at the situations that have come up, man, I remember a few seasons ago, it came up twice in a weekend. I think it was once at the pro level and once at the college level. And the situation in a 4-minute where the defense makes the decision to let them score, or, an offensive guy is paying attention and knows to go down. Do you drill those situations into your guys as well?
We do. Yeah. You have to kick those into effect. And that happened to us. Unfortunately, you kind of learn those, in a game at some point in time and usually end up on the wrong end of the score. So that really teaches you a good lesson. I remember we were playing for the state championship in 2008 against De La Salle, and we took a safety. We'd already basically had enough 2 punts already. So, and it was a situation we wanted to take a safety, we wanted to do with our quarterback. Well, we hadn't practiced that. So we took 2 timeouts to talk about that in a row. And so as the play is going, he steps in the end zone and the referee accidentally blew the whistle. So 3 things happened. One is we had to kick off with the last play of the game. And on their side, they had to receive the ball with the last play of the game. And of course, to De La Salle, they had something ready, right? And then the third thing was I should have informed the referee of what we're doing. So he was aware that he might not have blown that whistle. We might not have even gotten to the kickoff return situation. That taught me a little like, oh, we got to work all kinds of scenarios and you just don't know. And I learned that I make sure I inform the referee if there's anything like that I'm going to do. So they're aware of, we're going to try to take this clock out. We're going to take a safety. We're going to try to stay in the back lane until as far as we can and step out as soon as somebody gets close. Because had it gone the way we thought, the game would have been over. Thank goodness we came out at the right end of it, but still a great learning lesson either way.
Yeah. One of my favorite books is Finding the Winning Edge by Bill Walsh. And I think if there's the biggest takeaway I have from that book that I've read through multiple times is that you prepare for all contingencies. And like you said, sometimes that's not just on the players, it's on the coach and knowing that, hey, we've got to communicate too. And there's just so much to the game. It's all about attention to detail. Well, Coach, I really appreciate you taking the time with us, and congratulations again to you and your program, and good luck to you and the Huskies the rest of the way.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
That wraps up this week's Coaching Coordinator Network National Coach of the Week, presented by Modern Football. If you're looking for a competitive edge on Friday night, take a serious look at modern football technology. From live in-game analytics to practice, tracking, and post-game analysis, it's the all-in-one system built to help coaches make faster, smarter decisions. Don't get left behind. Visit modernfootball.com today and see how your staff can win with modern football.